Okay, we're live.
Okay. Yes.
How about that?
How about that? I love it.
Welcome back to Alliance Aces. I'm Chip Rodgers. I'm VP of Marketing Alliances with WorkSpan, and excited to be joined today by Rana Kahl. Rana is Director of Strategic Alliances at Appirio, and we've been chatting a little bit, and I think we'll have a really interesting conversation today. So Rana, thank you for joining.
Thanks so much, Chip, for having me. I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite topics. I'm such a channel geek. I can't wait to talk all thing alliances.
Well, that's great. So, and you've had a great career in a lot of different, kinds of roles. Maybe we can start with sort of, the things what you're up to today at Appirio, and then let's also talk about, some of your previous backgrounds and, some of the different pathways that you've taken all around, channel and alliances. But I'd love to hear some of that.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects. Truly, I am really a geek about this. I love everything that has to do with alliances and channels. I currently am at Appirio working on global alliances and primarily focused on Salesforce and Workday. Both are it's a very interesting dichotomy from an alliance structure perspective. And for me, the first time sitting on the other side of the table on the services side versus on the vendor side. So it's been quite an experience. It's been particularly exciting looking at how to build out what was a very healthy domestic practice and expand it out globally. And for someone like me who's multilingual, that's been very exciting. Multicultural, I've lived in Europe and I've lived in the Middle East. So for me to have that opportunity to go back and utilize that experience to build the business has been a ton of fun and very productive as a result of that. Anytime something's fun, you seem to have really good results, I think.
Yeah.
But I wound my way here very unconventionally, and that's kind of my theme. There's nothing, I started my career like many do, trying to climb the ladder, and then realized that my work didn't feel like work, that I was just having a blast doing my job, and that it was fun, and I looked forward to it, and I loved the people that I was working with, and I was always meeting these new fun partners, and I had the best of both worlds. I always felt like I had the best job in the company, even when it was hard, even when you had to roll up your sleeves. So I spent a lot of time in the HCM space, which is kind of where the majority of my experience is, but it wasn't called that then. Having the opportunity to be one of the first 20 people in the door at Career Builder, and building it from, a company that wasn't even named that originally. It was called, we were NetStart at the time, and turning it into this, global behemoth of a recruiting company back when there was no such thing as internet recruiting. That was probably one of the best rides of my career. But also just having the opportunity to work in the nonprofit space, knowing that you were bridging partnerships with companies that were trying to help, the American Cancer Society or the ASPCA or Alzheimer's Foundation, or at JDRF, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, or you could go on and on, and anything you can imagine, that you were working with companies to make those organizations more effective so they could do more with those donor dollars. I mean, you really, honestly, you go from not just having a fun time, but knowing that every day mattered immensely what you did. So, and of course, did a lot of tech in between, but really, to me, I always focus on the things that seem to have the biggest impact on my world around me, and those are the things that bring me joy. And when they bring me joy, then I know I'm having fun and I'm being productive at work, and makes it a great ride.
Well, that's great. So, Rana, I love, and it's interesting that that you're, which we didn't talk about earlier, but sort of multicultural, multilingual. I think that's probably a good background for working with partners, right?
Yeah, it sure helps. And I have to say that, when you go to EMEA and you go, because everyone starts in London, right? Because you don't have the language barrier. and you sit at the table with the team there, who are usually regional or local, and they start to explain to you, we understand that you might not be familiar with how we work here in Europe, and I can stop them and raise my hand and say, but I am. I've lived it and I've done it, and I understand culturally where we face barriers, and how we need to localize, where we need to localize, where we can scale to regionalize, and how we can optimize that as well as advance it. I mean, what held true 5 years ago is not necessarily where we're going globally. So being able to not just understand, but also evolve everyone's thinking is just an absolute delight. And knowing that you can bring that again. So for me, I'm kind of a get it done sort of person. I'm just keeping it clean here, but I like to see I'm very outcomes driven, measurable outcomes driven. So anytime I can take, and one of my personal taglines is turning relationships into revenue. Anytime I can take an idea or a concept and point it directly back to some revenue for the company, that's when I get the most invigorated and my adrenaline will not stop running. And those kind of conversations is exactly where we start to see that fruition, that come to fruition.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, I think it seems to me, but tell me, that background, not only sort of, okay, no, I can speak this language, I've been to this, area, I understand, but also just I think having had that experience, it also gives you just flexibility, right? And so I can be thrown into a new situation, and it's going to be just fine because I've come through so many crazy other previous situations. So
yeah, absolutely, no question. Change is definitely my friend. I adapt quickly to things for that reason. I went to 5 high schools. I lived in 7 countries. Put me down, I'm good in 24 hours. I've got myself oriented. But it also helps for me. What I found the biggest benefit, all that experience was early in my life. But what I took forward with it was the value of the communication piece, the ability, knowing that I have the ability to find a way to communicate with people, which becomes so critical when you're trying to build a relationship that will eventually lead to more. But also knowing that there's no one right way to do things, right? When you speak multiple languages, you recognize that you can say it this way, or you can say it this way, you can say it this way, and each one is highly valid. It's just a matter of when is it most appropriate, or where is it most effective, right? I used to work for someone who always used to remind me, would you rather be right or would you rather be effective? And I always fall down on the side of being effective. And using that experience has certainly helped me love what I do, because I can sit down and connect with anyone I'm working with, because I'm naturally curious about them, and I'm naturally interested in them as a person. And that all comes from all that experience and the ability and desire to want to communicate with other people.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's great. That's really some really interesting insights, I think, to working with partners, because you as you're part of a company, you get very connected, and you understand the company, but then when you're starting to work with partners, then you have to sort of learn a whole new culture, right, and a whole new world and everything, right? So and then it's translating between the two.
Right, absolutely. And I think ultimately you're looking for relevance, right? In order to connect with someone, in order to find a place where you want to continue to invest in each other, it needs to be relevant. And again, it comes back to that communication piece. How do you create the relevance when you need to understand what incents that person, not just the person, but the person as they represent the initiative or the organization. All that goes together, of course. But to me, having that understanding is where you drive that relationship to revenue, because there's relevance there, and it matters. It matters. People get up and want to connect with you every day, right? They look forward to the meeting. They don't dread the meeting. It's how do we become more productive, and how do we create that revenue out of the relationship?
Yeah. And I think you just said something, excuse me, really interesting as well, which is understanding, what drives them and their initiative and what their goals are, right?
First thing I ask every time.
Yeah.
Help me understand what matters to you. What are your strategic initiatives, and how can I contribute to that? And vice versa. As long, reciprocity is another one of the keys, right? It must be a reciprocal relationship. Otherwise, the investment will not continue long term. And we're all in these for the long term, right? Even when you're in startup mode and you don't know where you're going, and you know that there may be an exit strategy that involves an acquisition of some type at some point, you're still looking for the strategic play. How do we work together in a way that will matter to both our businesses and grow them to whatever the next level may be, whatever makes the most sense in that time, right? And to me, I'm also an iterative checker too. I'm constantly, revisiting plans and strategies and trying to understand, what's evolved, what's changed. Workday last July bought Adaptive Insights. So suddenly there was a quick shift and it now went from, let's look at financials, which is still important, but also let's look at planning and how do we incorporate that and what does that mean? And then I sit back and think, how can I draw on my experience building businesses, because that's what I do, and help build the adaptive business for Workday from my purview, from my perspective, and how do I contribute to that, which then creates a dialogue over and over again around how do we work together and how do we collaborate and partner to create a bigger entity, whatever it happens to be that we're working on.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you do, when you're just kind of taking that thread a little bit, when you're working with so you've got your own capabilities, right?
Right.
And then you're working with a partner that has their capabilities. And what's some of the thinking and the process that you go through to sort of figure out where are those, like, we want to stay away from these areas that might be potentially competitive, but here are some things, let's put these, these different pieces together to create a unique offering that is going to be really, valuable to our joint customers,
Right.
How do you have a process, or do you have a way of working with, with your partners to find those unique value propositions?
So I'm grinning because in my mind, I have a playbook for everything. Some of it's more organized than others. And what I mean by that is, sometimes for me, so I once worked with a woman who would say to me, and I love this, and I've taken it and run with it. Rana, alliances, channels, whatever strategic alliances, anything in that, it's 80% physics and 20% magic. And I would say, and the first time she said that, what do you mean by that? Well, it's very simple. The physics is the infrastructure. It's all the systems that we have in place to drive things so that we don't have to worry about where do I register my deal or lead, or how do I get my MDF, or what do I, whatever happens to be relevant in that particular scenario. How do I make these tactical transactional things happen? That's the physics. And there's a lot of that, right? The sharing of sales data, deal data, how do we collaborate? But once you have that in place, and I've often, again, from an unconventional standpoint, I've often been called on to build an alliance practice from scratch. So how do you, so the first thing I focus on in those cases is the infrastructure. How do I get the infrastructure in place so I can create the magic that drives us to that revenue? So in the case of something like that, where how do you find those initiatives that will drive the business, or there is a cadence around, I think, planning that's critical. And when I say that, I mean, I am, unstructured to the sense that I like to find the nooks and crannies where those key conversations happen, but I'm highly structured from a communication cadence. You will meet with me weekly. We will have a quarterly QBR. And I don't have a lot of wiggle room on those, because what I find is that as you create that cadence and momentum, inevitably you start to measure. And we don't really, frankly, I mean, we all know this, we don't achieve anything without measurement. Right. Setting goals and then measuring ourselves against them. And so to me, it becomes ever critical to set realistic goals that have quantifiable outcome measurements to them. And I'm very religious about this. I will stay all day if I have to until we get to the point where we identify those 3 to 5 initiatives that we will focus on in that quarter to create the momentum that we're looking for in the overarching strategic initiative direction. Yeah. But it's those side conversations where you find the magic nuggets. So outside of the structure, but the structure creates the opportunity for the side conversation. It's right. After sitting through a QBR, and mine I like to make very intense, but also very colorful. So, you might spend a little bit of time with finance, and you might spend time with development, and you might spend time with sales, right, and marketing, all in the same day. And then the wheels start turning. And then maybe at dinner that night, suddenly you have that key conversation that says, but what if? What if we did this? What if we tried this? We know a way, like I was working with my partners at Cornerstone to productize services to help us fill product gaps, which we just hadn't caught up with developmentally. What if we could productize this service and then create, and that comes from that conversation where you're sitting in the QBR and you're talking about what are your strengths? How do you build on those strengths? And it's that, to me, it comes back to the communication. And not just the communication, but the technology that enables the communication to be effective.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, we were talking about technology earlier and just how the world has changed, right? And yeah, especially for alliances where, you said you were talking to a colleague in India earlier this morning, and I mean that's just the world we live in these days, and and it just makes it helps bridge gaps, right?
Very much so. I think not just bridge gaps. I mean, that's great reactive opportunity for the technology, but it also creates a lot of possibility and opportunity. And for someone like me, for what I do, I have to live in that world. I have to live in possibility and opportunity all day long. And the technology eliminates a lot of the meticulous and burdensome and time-consuming transactional activity, and then gives you the opportunity to have those meaningful strategic discussions that actually change and evolve the way you work together with your partners. And so I love and embrace the technology. I love that, yes, it's a burden, and yes, we all get frustrated when, my GoToMeeting once again locks me out of my own meeting, right? We all get frustrated with that. But at the same time, look at what it creates, where I'm sitting with my colleague, literally collaborating, in the same document at the same time, his evening, my morning, and getting it finished so that we can effectively keep moving forward, right? As much as the measurable accountability is critical, I think forward momentum is also critical. Even if it's what do they always say? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Yeah. So you have to keep those steps moving along. And that's what the technology enables. It enables you to transact the MDF. It enables you to transact the deal reg. It enables you to transact the campaign that you want to launch for your partners to help them be more productive. It enables you to put out that incentive for the sales team so that you can help drive the behavior that that you can help, you can condition toward, I always say we love working with salespeople because we can always create whatever magic we need to by just adjusting their comp plan, right? And good salespeople will always follow suit. They always will, and it's so great to have that. But that's what the technology enables, is that becomes a quick, okay, let's execute, and then you get to the bigger conversation. And it excites me to no end at this moment, where we have such a great convergence of phenomenal technology that, people trying to create seamless ways to communicate Salesforce records between companies that really want a wall between their information. So how do you filter funnel the information back and forth so you don't have to keep, emailing it back and forth, God help us, right? Or planning on spreadsheets and PowerPoint. So how do you create the opportunity to bring that together so that you're collaborating on it? Or just, what we focus on in Appirio a lot is the worker experience. And we have a lot of chatter around culture, in the HCM space. We talk about culture, we talk about worker experience, we talk about that driving the customer experience. Well, from my perspective, I think a lot about the partner experience. And I know that my partners have several other partners. And I always, always want them to feel like when they're working with me, it's easy. That those transactional things that can become so burdensome and so cumbersome, they're just easy. So we can keep focus on those bigger initiatives that we want to measure against. And we're not upstreaming ourselves like salmon trying to overcome the operational challenges that we all end up facing somewhere along the way. I always like to eliminate as many of those as we can, just so we always want, we all play, well, I like to play to win, not to not lose. And I like to play to win by stacking the deck in my favor anytime I can. And the technology to me helps me do that very effectively. So it's an exciting time, when you see the technology partner experience and experience as a platform, I just think, or experience as a service. I just think what a great, platform as a service, experience as a service. We have some really exciting directions we can be going in with all that.
Yeah. So what do you think? What is the future for Alliances and partnering? And
I think we'll see more and more. So what's excited me is I remember early in my career when I started primarily in the HCM space, and nobody had partner programs, and no one was looking for alliance people. I had to constantly keep creating my own job. Now I think what I see and what I see more of happening is that our world has become much more collaborative, and part of it's because the technology enables that to happen. So I see that increasing. I read a lot about partner programs dying, and is this the death of the partner ecosystem? And I'm not there. I believe it's actually become a bigger and bigger investment for companies because they see the scale that never goes away, right? That idea of how do you take something and scale it out across it? That economy never leaves the equation. So the interest in the value becomes more and more appealing. I find I'm having more conversations with PE firms and VC firms who are considering a partner structure much earlier in the equation than they used to, say, 5-10 years ago. And to me, that's exciting because it shows that the value sustains, right? It holds true in the models. So if anything, I see the technology and the need, as our business world gets smaller and we realize, lower barriers to entry for small businesses, the ability to chain ourselves and link ourselves together via partnerships, it gives us that whole, the overused sum is greater than the whole of the parts, but it gives us that opportunity. And so to me, that's exciting. And that's what, again, living in a world of possibility and opportunity, we have that opportunity to enjoy possibilities that didn't exist without the technology. So, I'm excited. I've been many times I've considered, okay, I've spent a lot of time in this space. I hate to say over 20 years because it makes me feel really, really old, but it's been over 20 years. And I've often thought I should change course. I've been doing this way too long, but it's so fun. And it constantly evolves itself so that it feels like a new experience every time. So now again, I'm reinvigorated looking at, oh my goodness, all this technology that's out there and how it can change the landscape. And then what can we do to leverage that? And how can we get to market faster? I look at things like speed to market and go to market strategies, and the technology enables me to do that faster and better. And so, yeah, of course I want to go experience that and see. And then I work with an amazingly creative group of people at Appirio. And the fun thing about working at a GSI is that you can turn around and have an idea and say, so I saw you guys were building some Alexa apps for Salesforce. What can we do for Workday? Oh my God, the possibilities. And the whiteboarding begins, and it just becomes, it's again, living in a world of possibility and opportunity. You just dream things and they start happening. And it's all about the technology. The technology enables it. So
that's great. Well, and it was a study recently. and just a survey of CEOs. I think there were actually there've been a few, but one was from Accenture. Another one, IBM did another one. Their annual CEO survey, and partnering, is it's on the CEO, it's on CEOs' minds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our ability to compete with a broader ecosystem, I mean, having an ecosystem to be able to compete with our, competitors, and really put these solutions together and bring something cool to market quickly, right?
Right. Exactly. I thought I have a consulting entity that I work with. It's my consulting entity that I advise companies on go-to-market strategies and partnering and so on. And again, usually in the startup phase, I spent a lot of time looking at the cybersecurity space. I mean, new companies cropping up it feels like almost daily, right? And the game there is, how do you get to market as fast as you can? Because there will be some level of consolidation coming, soon, if it hasn't already started. So what's the fastest route to market? It's via an ecosystem. So many of these companies, rather than hiring a sales force and enabling a sales force and getting them up to speed, which will take at least 6 months, they're going straight to partner. Because that's how you get that ROI a lot faster, by making a little bit more investment up front. To me, I still struggle with, and I see it getting better though, the justification of the expense and the ROI. So the expense may be a little higher up front. The timing is always a lot longer than any CEO or CFO would like to see. But eventually, if they're patient enough, it always pays off. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, Rana, this has been great. I really have enjoyed. You've shared a lot of really great ideas and advice and experiences. I wanted to call out a couple of them. One, I love the relationship to revenue. I love that. That's a keeper. And then you mentioned the 80% physics and 20% magic. That's a really good one as well. And then I think partner experience, is really critical in making it easy. So thank you so much for taking some time today, and really appreciate you joining us, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects with someone who clearly is highly immersed in it, just like I am. So this has been a great time for me. Thank you.
Great. Good. Thank you, Rana. So yeah, I think with that, I'll say, we're signing off here from Foster City and from
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. That's right. Yeah.
Northern Virginia. Yeah. Snowy Northern Virginia.
Northern Virginia with snow.
Yeah.
Paralyzed.
Yes. Paralysis snow. Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rana. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining today.
Thank you.